have something kind of fun, something kind of new. We are going to be talking about, I think, six super ugly guns. And we've got a bunch of different ones. We've got the Dardic revolver. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that one before, but it's definitely really weird looking. That's a common thread a bunch about all of these firearms. They all look weird as hell. Anyways, the Dardic revolver is the first one. Then we've got the FP45 Liberator. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that one. Then we've got the Nambu Type 14. Hey, what up, bro? And the Nambu Type 14 is actually like an old Japanese weapon. And it's kind of cool because I'm pretty sure you could use that in Call of Duty World at War. And then I have the Korborov TBK, and there's also like a handful of other what's it called? Letters and numbers that come along with the TBK. And then there's the P90. I have a special spot in my heart for the P90. It literally was the gun that they had on Stargate Atlantis. I don't know if you ever watched Stargate Atlantis, but literally it's just some stupid sci-fi show. And they would go on there and they would go through this thing called the Stargate. It would take them to like alien worlds. And everybody was decked out with a P90. That was like the only weapon they used. And it was kind of fun because it was literally like dudes using P90s against like aliens using like blaster rifles and like shotguns and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool. It was pretty fun. And then last but not least, we have the Apache revolver. And I'm pretty sure I showed the Apache revolver. What's up, Cookies? Hey, bro. Did not realize I had you on fucking YouTube. That's cool. Anyways, the Apache revolver as well as the last one we're going to be talking about. And I also talked about that when we talked about knuckle dusters, because the Apache revolver is basically the knuckle dusters that has a knife attached to it and is a pistol. So we'll get into that. So yeah, first we're going to talk about the Dardic revolver, and I'll go ahead and pull up the brightness on my laptop here, and then I'll turn it around so you guys can kind of see what this revolver looks like. So this is the Dardic revolver. What does that look like to you? It looks like something out of what, like 007? It looks like Mission Impossible shit. I don't know. It looks like high tech, but then at the same time corny. And I don't know why, but a lot of people really loved that gun design in like the early 60s for some reason. But let's read a little bit about the Dardic. That was the first one. That's definitely an ugly gun for sure. So the Dardic revolver, that one's by Rock Islands. Three Stooges type gun. Yeah, basically, dude. If you think that one's bad, we got plenty more horrible, ugly guns on here. So this apparition, they call it an apparition like it's a fucking ghost. This apparition is vintage of 1958 and is a revolver. Even though it looks like an automatic, that's crazy that it's not a semi-automatic. The cases for its ammunition were made out of a high-strength plastic, called Cleonese Fortiflex. And they're not round, but formed in the shape of equilateral triangles with rounded corners. What the hell? So picture a triangle round. That is insane. And they called them Trowns. Trowns, as they were called. And they were originally intended for use as machine gun ammo because more of them could be packed in a small space than could standard pack cartridges. So the fact that they were triangle rounds is they were going to put them in a box and then ship them off to war. And they're like, oh, since they're triangle shaped, we can just fucking stack them up on each other and then, like, you know, create more space in the box. But apparently they didn't like that. It says this idea didn't pan out. So the inventor, David Dardic, came up with the ideal revolver that fed this from a magazine. So again, we're talking about the Dardic revolver. Now that we got some more people in here, I'll show you again what that thing looks like. So this is the Dardic revolver. Ugly as all get out. but very unique in the sense that it was for a very specific ammunition. So there were two Dardic models, the 1100 and the model 1500. Both were convertibles that could be switched from 22 rimfire to 38 special. That's actually really badass because then you could just have a little cool target pistol, and then if you want to up it up, you just switch it out, and then now you have like a concealed carry pistol. Though if somebody like you look like fucking Zap Brannigan from fucking Futurama rolling around with that thing, dude. Seriously, it's ugly. But the fact that you could turn it into 38 is pretty badass. So they were both basically the same, except that the former held 11 rounds and the latter 15. So you could only hold 11 38 special rounds versus 22 rimfire. I mean, that kind of makes sense. So you loaded the Trowns, these triangle stackable rounds. Again, you loaded these Trowns into the magazine. What does that say? It looks like if something happens to the side of the gun, it'll blow up. Right. It literally looks like you could snap it in half or something. It's an ugly gun. So it says you loaded the Trowns into the magazine one at a time because the magazines did not detach, okay? So they fed up into a 3-chambered open-sided cylinder. When the cylinder rotated into battery, the frame of the revolver closed and the open cylinder side rotated. When the cylinder rotated after firing, the case was popped out of the open chamber. If you wished, you could remove the revolver's soda straw barrel and snap the action and the grip into a rifle stock. That is pretty cool. And this is what they're actually referencing right here, is the fact that you could take that apart and then put that into a rifle stock. So you see that? You could slide it up in there, and that would be pretty cool. So you just pop off that barrel, and now you got a 22 caliber rifle. That'd be cool for small game hunting, honestly. For a vintage aspect, I might want to have the gun just to have on a shelf somewhere in case the zombie apocalypse ever happens. I'll be fucking hunting rabbits with that thing all day. And then again, you could have it as a 38, but I'm not sure if the rifle version could be fired as a 38. So it says about the only rational reason for something like the Durdick was the ability to convert from one cartridge to another in the high magazine capacity. Again, so it's just kind of a pointless gun. Kind of a cool idea, but a pointless gun. This was in 1958 when everyone carried revolvers, and the only automatic that held more than 7 shots was the Browning High Power. So the Durdick was in limited production from 1958 to 1960 for only 2 years. And so it says only about 100 pistols were made. Wow, that's crazy. And it says on the low end, which is probably more accurate, only around 40 of these pistols were made. So they are probably an extremely high priced item if you were able to come across one. That's pretty cool. So the next one we're going to talk about is the FP45 Liberator. And this looks like a toy lighter that you would see in like a 50-cent machine. Look at that. That can't be real, bro. It looks like somebody stepped on it, but that's what it's supposed to look like. That is absolutely insane. While you're here, guys, go ahead and like up the live. Drop some comments in the chat, and if you want me to review a gun, drop that down below, and we'll review that at the end of the show. But yeah, this is called the FP45 Liberator. It is ugly as all get out. I don't know what they were thinking for this gun. Let's read a little bit about it. So, again, the Liberator has been described as a piece of junk. That's basically because it is. It is a piece of junk. That's what they say. So, but it was made that way deliberately by the Guide Lamp Division of General Motors during World War II. It was a single-shot 45 ACP that was given to people who parachuted into France. That's pretty cool. So Frenchmen, they literally gave this specifically to Frenchmen who would volunteer to parachute behind enemy lines and try and basically do almost a suicide mission, because they would just give them this junk gun, they're like, here's one single bullet, and we're gonna drop you behind enemy lines. Go try and kill somebody. That is absolutely insane. So again, they would give this to Frenchmen that did not like being in occupied German, who did not like being occupied by the German army. So it says they would pocket an FP-45, sneak up behind a convenient German, shoot him, and take his gun. So this was basically guerrilla tactics. So they were manufacturing these cheap little tiny single shot 45 ACP guns as a means to an end. So you would sneak up on somebody, use that weapon, and then take their weapon, and now you have a better weapon at the expense of your junk gun. So that's really cool for guerrilla warfare. That is really cool. Never would have even thought that was a good idea. It looks like someone welded it together. It definitely does. It definitely does look like that. No, yeah, as an espionage like sabotage gun, that is really cool. So each Liberator came with a little dowel stick to punch out the shells. It had no ejector, so you had to use the dowel stick to uneject it. And for the people just popping in, this is the gun we're talking about. This junk, it is called the FP Liberator. It was used by French paratroopers to go sneak behind enemy lines, use the single shot it had, take out the enemy, and get their gun. So that is really cool. Now, it said the guns were made as they the barrels were unrifled and the effective range was only 8 yards. That is absolutely insane. So if you shoot it, you're probably not going to hit what you're looking at. 1 million Liberators were manufactured for $2.10 each. Each one of those Liberators was $2.10. That is wild. The little guns were made as they were because no one wanted thousands of 45 handguns in the hands of French civilians when the war was over. That's hilarious. So they purposely made them shitty so, you could have one, but it's only a single shot. So, I mean, one single self-defense situation, that is crazy. Now, once the war was over, the Liberator was guaranteed to fall apart quickly. That's hilarious. They literally made them to fall apart too. It says no one knows for certain how many were actually issued. Probably the vast majority were destroyed at the war's end. Today, an FP-45 in good condition in the box, all the trimmings, cost around $6,000. That's crazy, and that's definitely a piece that you would have to keep on the shelf, because if you use it more than once, it runs the risk of falling apart. COD tactics. Yeah, basically COD tactics. I think they definitely didn't fire sometimes. I would not be surprised. How unfortunate would that be if you're just like some French guy and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go get this German dude's gun. You go to fucking walk up behind him and it just doesn't go off, bro. What do? Dive back into the bushes? Like, that's crazy. So we're going to talk about another super ugly gun. This one looks a lot like the Dardic. It's called the Nambu Type 45, and it's funny, Niche, that you mentioned COD tactics, because this one is literally a COD gun. It was in Call of Duty World at War for sure. This is the Nambu Type 14. You guys remember running around with this in Call of Duty? Another whack-ass gun. Literally looks like a pipe gun or something. Looks like it would be spitting out like welding grease or something, you know what I mean? Or not welding grease, just like grease for a machine, you know what I mean? Also kind of reminds me of something you'd see in Fallout too, for sure. So that is the Nambu Type 14. That is a Japanese weapon. So it's been pointed out that a subtle variation of the line one way or another can determine whether a firearm is considered good looking or an inanimate hideosity. Inanimate hideosity. That is a word I've never said before. Words that I've never said together before. Take the Nambu Type 14 vintage of 1926, which appears distantly related to the Luger, which is one of the handsomest and most iconic pistols of all time. But the Type 14 is generally ranked of one of the supremely ugly handguns. Japan produced around 400,000 of these Type 14s, and it was the principal sidearm of the Imperial Japanese Army throughout World War II. Now, it was issued almost entirely to officers who had to pay for the gun themselves. So you get issued this gun, you're an officer, you're high class, and they still make you pay for it. They don't. I don't know if it comes out of your check or what. That is ridiculous. Um, so it was considered a mark of prestige and a badge of rank rather than a tool for actual combat. Okay, whatever. Now, this was just as well. The Type 14 was chambered for an anemic 8mm cartridge, bro. You're in war talking about 8mm cartridges? What the hell? What does this say? What gun we talking here? So right now we are talking about the Nambu Type 14. This is an old gun. Japan produced over 400,000 of these guns. That's your Call of Duty gun right there. But again, that is just an old gun. These were given to Japanese officers, and they were literally just to have on your hip just to show that you were badass. Yeah, you've definitely seen the Nambu before. So again, that was an anemic, a woefully undersized 8mm cartridge with half the muzzle energy of a 9mm. That is crazy. An 8mm has only half the velocity of a 9mm. The math ain't mathin'. Now, it was difficult to load. The magazine spring was not strong enough to reliably feed the cartridge into the battery. The safety was awkward to manipulate. Due to the curiously bashed-in trigger guard, gloved fingers could not find room to fire the gun. So, bro, you literally had to take your fucking glove off to shoot this thing. Now, if you were not careful, it could discharge accidentally, obviously. Of course it would. So why was the Type 14 not replaced? Because the philosophy of the Japanese Imperial Army was that any shortcomings in its equipment could be overcome by the warrior spirit of its soldiers. Make that fucking make sense. I hate that shit. That is just like that stupid imperialistic attitude. That is so crazy, man. Like, I get having like honor and everything, but come on, bro. Be for real. Be for real. Now, nonetheless, the Type 14 proved adequate for executing prisoners of war. That's probably all it would be good for. That's horrible to say, but that's all they used it for. They would use it to execute prisoners of war and pesky civilians of occupied countries, of course, and assisting in seppuku when the officer involved did not have the courage for decapitation. Wow. So this has a very storied history, this weapon here. Now, it was highly popular among American soldiers and Marines as a souvenir. So you might find some of these floating around in your grandpa's gum cabinet. Japanese SIG P320. Basically, yeah, if you drop it on the ground, that thing's going off. Yeah, for sure. Except I don't think you could sue them back then, and I don't think they would take the guns back to like refile the trimmings or whatever they did to the P320s to make them not go off in your fucking pants. So next we are talking about, let me close out some of these tabs here. I got too many tabs open. So next, oh yeah, that's the Nambu. Okay, so next we're talking about the Korbarov TKB-022PM, the experimental assault rifle. All right, this is pretty cool. It's kind of cool, kind of not cool. It also looks like a weird antique that you would find at like a gas station when you're traveling through Missouri. You know what I mean? Like, it would be up on the shelf and it would be like either a tiny shot glass or it would be like a weird thing that you could smoke out of or something. I don't know. It's ugly. It's definitely ugly. That one definitely looks like a Fallout gun. So that is the Korbarov TKB. So, the brainchild of designer German Korbarov. Let's see. This experimental bullpup assault rifle was cooked up in either 1962 or 1964 in a project undertaken by the Soviet Army. No military gives a damn how its weapons look, but this one is pretty awful. It appears as though a private in the Soviet Army was given a box of gun parts and a hammer and told to assemble the whole mess, and if things didn't fit, to bash them in until they did. The Korbarov employed a plastic housing to contain its steel works. That seems pretty crappy. Now, the gun was allegedly very inaccurate and very. Oh no, it was allegedly very accurate and very controllable on full auto fire, but was rejected because it contained a great many parts that were fragile, and there were grave doubts about the durability of the stock. So the Korborov was relegated to the scrap bin of arms history. That's the Korborov. That is sad. What is that? Russian? That's definitely a Russian piece right there. Um, looks like some COD gun I made. Yeah, basically. It basically is. It would be anyways. So now we've got my favorite ugly gun of the bunch. And I don't know why they call this thing ugly. I'll kind of give you guys my 2 cents about it. But this is the FNP90. And like I get why they say it's ugly, but come on, bro. That is so fucking cool, dude. That's futuristic as fuck. FNP90, dude. And the reason I like this P90 so much is because I don't know if you guys know, I'm aging myself here, but I used to watch this show on sci-fi called Stargate Atlantis, right? So these guys would travel from our world through this portal into other dimensions, and they would fight aliens and shit. And our side, all the Earth people were fucking ammoed up to the gills, and they all had P90s, bro. So it would be the Earth people with P90s shooting at fucking dudes with like laser guns and shit. And it was entertaining as fuck. So the P90 forever has a place in my heart. You can't call that thing ugly. It's cool as fuck, but it's ugly. It is. I can't see the ugliness. All I see is just beauty when I look at this FNP90. So let's see what they have to say about it. So it says, this is a selective fire military police bullpup that was designed in the 1980s. I didn't realize it was that old of a weapon. Now, it is apparently a successful working firearm. It's carried by the Belgian military and has been exported to 50 countries worldwide. So they're still using it. So the FNP90 fits into a category between submachine guns and assault rifles. It's chambered for the 5.7 by 28 cartridge and carries 50 of them in a horizontal magazine above the barrel. Now the P90 is light, short, completely ambidextrous, polymer stocked, and fires from a close bolt blowback action. That's the good news. The bad news is, in the words of Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, it's so ugly it could be a part of a modern art masterpiece. Now, it looks as though the FN might have been commissioned by Salvador Dali and Pablo Picasso to jointly design a bullpup rifle, and worse, people might not believe it's a firearm and laugh at it, leading to tragic misunderstandings. Okay, they're hating on that for no reason. I'll show you guys one more time. That is not... It's a beautiful gun. Oh, look at this. That thing... I gotta get me one of these. They gotta make them in semi-auto, right? That thing's badass. I love it. Whatever. Okay, and now we're here to the very last one. Now we've got our Apache revolver. I was talking about this one the other day when we were talking about knuckle dusters. What's up, Steve? What does that say? The mags are the coolest part, yeah. What you do of your AR-15 keeps jamming. What do you do if your AR-15 keeps jamming? Brand new gun, never been fired. Well, you can send it back to the manufacturer and tell them that it's a brand new gun and it keeps jamming. They'll definitely fix it for you. But if you want to take things into your own hands, I recommend going on YouTube and looking up that issue and trying to troubleshoot it. But it sounds like there may be some sort of debris somewhere in the internal part of the firearm that might be causing jamming. And it may be like a burr on the metal or somewhere in there. But if you're up for it, maybe you can disassemble it, make like a soft file to everything. I don't know. Don't take a file to it. Just kind of rub your finger along there and see if you feel any burrs or anything like that. And if it's something that you don't think you can fix, but you know what the issue is, then go ahead and send it right back to the manufacturer and make them fix that shit for you, bro. And have them send you stickers and stuff. They love doing that. They hate you know what I mean. Gun manufacturers, they don't want their stuff to be poorly talked about. So yeah. Let's see. The TKB 408 is a Soviet WW2 gun, and I hate that its mag is so close to the grip, but it's a bullpup. I'll have to look that up. The TKB. Oh, and that's the one we were just looking at. Yeah. Oh, wait. No, it's not. Oh, yeah, of course, Steve. No worries, bro. I'm going to look up the TKB 408 real quick. Let's see here. TKB 408. Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah. I see what you're saying. The magazine is way too close to that grip. That would feel so weird. Let's go ahead and pull up a picture of that. That's an interesting one. Is it gonna let me pull it up? There we go. So yeah, you guys can kind of see how close the magazine is to the grip. And that is the TKB 408. That's crazy. Jimbo says just to oil your AR. He did. Oh shoot. Well, see, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it might be a manufacturer thing. Did you just get it? Is it? You said it's brand new. I mean, but is it brand new to you, or is it brand new? Because if it's brand new, tell them to fix that thing. All right, so now to end us off tonight, we're going to be talking about the Apache revolver. And the Apache revolver has some history. I was talking about knuckle dusters and the history of knuckle dusters. And of course, they had to talk about the Apache. Now, the Apache is pretty cool because it is a knuckle duster. It also has a knife, and it is also a revolver. All of that creates this Frankenstein of an ugly, ugly weapon called the Apache revolver. Now, look at how uncomfortable that thing would be. The TKB has SA80 vibes. Let's look up the SA80. But yeah, so that is the Apache revolver, SA80. Oh yeah, I can see that. Kind of where the grip and the magazines kind of curve at each other. But honestly, I like that SA80 a lot better than the TK, or TKB 408. Again, so let's get back into that Apache revolver. So this multi-use weapon combined brass knuckles, a fold-out dagger, and a double-action revolver. And I'll pull up a picture of that SA80 for you guys just so you can kind of get a quick peek at it. This is the one that Cannon was talking about, Cannon. It is pretty cool. It definitely looks like a British gun. That looks like something a British commando would have for sure. Ugly ass revolver, bro. It is super ugly. And like, I would consider it more of a knuckle duster than an actual revolver. So again, this multi-use weapon combined brass knuckles, a fold-out dagger, and a double-action revolver that used the 7mm Le Fouché pinfire cartridges. A 7mm. That's ugly as hell by itself. I do not like that. SA80, talk about jamming. Really? Does that one a notorious jammer right there? So it says the 7mm Le Fouché pinfire cartridges. I'm gonna have to look up what those look like. Now, it was designed by one Louis Doin and was produced in Belgium for 1 year in 1869. It had no connection to the Apache Indian tribes. Les Apaches was the name taken by a Parisian gangster in the late 19th century, and this odd piece of machinery was apparently designed for them. Because there was no barrel, accuracy was probably limited to a couple of feet, but it did work that close in. However, deploying the various mechanical components could be complex and time-consuming. And in the meanwhile, you were likely to catch a fatal kick from a practitioner of savate, a form of French kickboxing that was developed around the same time and might take your head clean off. So while you're fiddling with your fucking Apache knuckle duster over here, some French dude is gonna come kick your fucking teeth out of your head. That is insane. The fact that they have their own French kickboxing, I've never heard of Sabate, but after I get off tonight, I'm definitely gonna look up Sabate and go in like a deep dive of that because I gotta see somebody fight in that style. Okay, so again, that is the Apache revolver. And we'll just do one quick look. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. I just got my very first review out on the High Point C9. We did a segment, is it trash or does it smash? So I hope you guys are going to like that. Let's wrap this up. I hate to do it just because everybody just jumped in, but I got to get to bed. I got work in the morning. Thanks everybody for being here. My name is Dion W Pro. I'm the best in the Midwest. Y'all take it easy.